Hello and welcome to Assemblies of the World with me, Anna Isabel, and I am delighted to have Hans-Gunther Kern with me today. Hello.
Hi there, and so pleased to be with you all today. Very honored to be on your channel, Anna Isabel.
Well, it's always a joy. You're a fellow CAPI member and you just are so knowledgeable about, well, let's just say nature, okay? Nature in general and our relationship with nature and the earth particularly and the rhythms of seasons and of life. So I think maybe for those who are new to you, let's just tell everyone what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, in a nutshell, I'm basically, as you say, helping people to realize that we share something very much in common when we look within ourselves and when we look outside ourselves. And that's what you mentioned, nature. And nature could be broken up in many different realms. As we know, there are the different realms of nature, of the mineral, the plant, and the animal world. And if you really think of yourself, to entertain for a moment the thought, even if it might sound strange, that everything that's outside there, in its own way of manifesting, is within us. And not just nature, because it goes beyond nature, it's supernature, the supernatural, which is invisible, and we call it maybe also the cosmic or the universal, that all that is within each one of us. And if we can really wake up in what you just described, how, with this first snow or whatever a child or an animal experiences from that heart-centered soul experience of something that is really new, without preconceived ideas. That's, I think, really what I like to share with people, to come into that space where, particularly being outside in nature and with other people sharing these experiences, to open up the heart and then really enliven ourselves through that, enthuse ourselves through that again, be motivated to think beyond the problems, because we're so in our head, we're so separate from that lower part of our heart and the experience, that let's come into the heart space and experience life, nature, the universe, each other again in our wholeness. And that can happen when we open up in wonder and awe and see things for the first time.
And when you do that, it's easier to connect with each other as well. And of course, with, community assemblies, we really are wanting to connect with each other and to connect within ourselves and to connect with the earth itself. And it's just this beautiful feedback loop
Yeah.
once we start engaging in that way. And that is what would create thriving communities of mutual support and appreciation. So it's all very, very linked. When we do the Farmers Forum meetings, it's always so exciting to hear about the different things that you're doing. And just for everyone who isn't, again, very familiar with your work, um, it's the it begins with that understanding about how to allow life to thrive within the soil itself. So this is where it begins, and by linking in with the with not just nature as we see it, but what's in the heavens as well. So tell us more about the theory of biodynamics and Steiner and the links that you're making with nature and how that's working out for you.
Well, you mentioned Rudolf Steiner, who was a great teacher, philosopher, educator, and also natural and spiritual scientist. And he really inspired a lot of people in this last century, because he died more than 100 years ago, to open up to the fact that everything is connected. And when I really started going deeper into my midlife and so on, I realized everything is a whole. And when we go back to Aristotle, he coined the phrase, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And unfortunately, the schooling system in modern life has taken us into departmentalization, into specialization, into reductionist thinking and point-wise thinking instead of comprehensive and bringing things together again. So for me, Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy has opened up for me the fact what he practiced actually in his day and age was to look at all the different sciences, which are natural sciences, all the complementary kind of research that's happening now in the modern world, the traditional experiences in all the traditions in farming, gardening, in the way social and economic and governance structures were held in the past in very wise fashions, to bring all that together in a umbrella that we call the Holistic Living University as a people's university, to reclaim our right to practice research, explore life, practice life, and train without being hampered by certification, specialization, expertise, but that everybody can bring themselves to the board and to the playing field, so to speak, in the garden or wherever that is, in the research lab or in some other situations that we're creating together, and explore and work on developing together as a community. And I think this is essential for the future, is we're not on our own anymore in our research, in our exploration, in our manifestation, that we do this together as a group of diversified, uniquely different people, bringing our expertise or our specialties together, and yet being aware of everybody else's, not isolating ourselves anymore into our specialty. And that's my dream, and that's where we're bringing a lot of experts that are at cutting edge research and manifestation of different faculties together, be it in education, be it in medicine, complementary medicine and acute medicine practitioners also, be it in architecture, creating living architecture rather than these places that we live in, which are just dead square boxes. And then further into what's the nearest really, which we need to practice all, I think, this connection to the outer and inner nature again. So under that umbrella of Holistic Living University, we have different courses, workshops that we offer. And we're expanding next year and diversifying, which is really nice to bring more opportunities to experience different modalities of learning.
I think this is what excites me, because this is applied in everyday life. It's not just theoretical. So many times, my clients say to me, well, what can I do to have spirituality in my life? And I say, it's not something that you do for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's an attitude of living, and that you bring into everything that you do. And here what we're looking at is an understanding of interconnectedness that is very holistic in bringing together all facets of life. And as you said, including architecture, which is so huge. So I really love that. And I also love the fact that what you're doing is also empowering people, because there was something you said, about the age of experts. The age of experts means that everybody is locked out of most things because they can only be an expert in one thing. Or if they don't appear to have an expertise in anything, they're locked out of everything. Whereas that's not how our ancestors lived. Our ancestors lived by sharing experience and communication. It just reminds me, last year we were in Charlestown in Cornwall, and it was after dark, and we were just at the harbor, looking at everything and enjoying the lights and what we were seeing. But the thing that sticks in my mind most is not just how lovely the atmosphere was there. It was a young man who was fishing and an older man who also was fishing. They were not together, but the older man spotted the younger man and said, you know, if you did it this way. And the younger man was just so grateful that he'd been given this tip. And it was just such a lovely moment of human interaction, somebody sharing experience. And that's what used to be natural. And it used to be, you know, father to son, mother to daughter. That doesn't happen anymore, to the point now where recently we came across a family that pretty much works together. They're all employed by the same employer, but they work together. And the son was almost embarrassed to say he works with his father. And I thought, wow, okay, once upon a time that would have been normal. Now it's so unusual that people are a little bit embarrassed about it, which is comes back to that fracturing that you were talking about, the compartmentalizing. So I love this. I love that what you're doing is saying, your experience is valid. Let me add mine to yours. Let me add yours to mine. And that brings me to the wonderful biodynamics course that I've enrolled in, and which I am moving through shamefully slowly because of lack of time, but which I love because, and what I see is not just the information you're sharing, it's when you're talking to students that you're actually wanting to hear what their experience is. And that's all about the same thing, isn't it?
Well, it enriches life, doesn't it? When we start listening to each other and the questions are the quest that each one is on. And nobody's on the wrong quest. Everybody's on the right quest. There's no right or wrong, actually. Everybody is on their specific journey. And to support each other, like you elucidated with this beautiful example of the elder fisher and the younger man, when then there's a exchange happening, and hopefully there's more and more of the younger souls that are searching and questing, asking questions that are open questions to the community rather than just within themselves or just to chatbot or, just to Google. Because that's the thing nowadays that I remember my son, my middle son, he's very helpful what he's doing. He's a health coach, and he's now a homesteader and works volunteer in the fire brigade and has its own building business. Very multifaceted. But each time when I approach him and go, oh, could you tell me something about this, that, and the other? He goes, why don't you just Google it? And I said, I want this relationship with you. I want human relationships. I want to ask questions to humans, not to artificial intelligence. It might be easier, faster, and all that, but I want to take the time to be with people and help that other people will be also. And of course, he lives in Utah, far away, so he's a very busy man too, as I just described. He's multitasking and all that. But it's that what we're really having to create now, I think. And the basic skill sets with the spiritual insights, making them very practical, as you said, not to be abstract in spirit, but bring spiritual reality and truths into the practical practice, sharing it with the community. And often that spiritual practice is in the quest of questioning things, being more open to the others and their view of the world, so we learn from each other. And once we have that community created, we enriched in a much deeper level than when we compartmentalize everything and we're competing. We're starting collaborating and thriving.
There is nothing like asking somebody else, because I see how that brings confidence. Because if you ask a question of the chatbot, okay, you're going to get an answer, but you're not going to get the reassurance that you're looking for necessarily. If you, and this is my whole thing, okay, so we have some groups for the community assembly members set up about, so we have a legal hub, we have a farmers forum, we have lots of things on Signal, so people can ask questions and have them answered, and that's good. But sometimes there are some moments where you need a voice, because you need the voice to say, well, I can see you're not feeling very confident, so what's the issue? Or you want to pick up, there are things that are cold when they're written down. And particularly when you're just starting out with something. I see this with my herb club. It's wonderful that we can ask questions in the group, but it really comes alive when we meet.
Yeah.
When we meet and we talk and we share our experiences, and somebody says, oh, that's really good, I hadn't thought of that, and oh, I'll try that, and oh, do you have the recipe for this? It's so much warmer. And as a teacher, an astrology teacher, I see that too, because the best thing about the lessons are the questions my students ask. And I am a better teacher thanks to them, because of the questions they ask. So it's that lively interaction. So you have got some great classes that you've just started, some master classes. Tell us about those.
Yeah, we just had one yesterday, the second master class, and on the note of this journey of discovery together, it was beautiful to look at the different features that a garden might need to be a basic garden setup, and then have others who are coming in and creating their own gardens with their questions, and then exploring the different areas. And one of the areas that became particularly alive, which is not surprising, is water, and looking how we can work more consciously with water. And then, of course, you mentioned the soil and the earth and the mineral realm and the enlivened mineral soil that, you start maybe with a dead garden. Someone has done some conventional gardening and allotment. How do you enliven? How do you regenerate? How do you rejuvenate that soil? Is water playing a role there? Absolutely. Or is rainwater different from well water, from tap water? And to bring qualities into this, which we're covering in the masterclass, that are not just practical, pragmatic questions and explorations and facts, but also these discussions where people come from different angles of going, how can we relate what we're doing to different elements? So we've got the earth, the water, the air, the light, the warmth, and how can we discover anew how they work together to bring about fertility? So it's not just the soil. Even we might be very fixated with assessing the soil and assessing the layout of the garden, the infrastructure and the structure that we talked about yesterday. But then how does this all relate to each other, and in the process, in the flow, handled day to day? And then also with the neighbors, how is that relationship with the neighbors that are next door in our allotments or next door to our home where we have a garden and there's a fence, and how do we relate to the neighbors now and create really a greater consciousness than just our garden? And we have 12 masterclasses. They're set up in a way that they lead people from the first introduction that we had. There was an overall introduction into each area of the gardening that is practiced at different times of the year. So it's aligned to the seasonal changes in the garden. It's aligned to the development of a garden. So people are taken through the different steps of how to develop the garden and all the different modalities, practices, and principles. And hopefully after a year, people are fit enough as they practice while we go through the year to do their own garden and share it with others. Now, that's just, masterclasses are really there for beginner gardeners or gardeners who might want to get to know more about biodynamics. And of course, I always welcome very strongly leaders out of the community who are in the health profession or in the teaching profession, because my initial impulse was really to do this in Waldorf school setting, Steiner school settings, teaching children, but I've never ended up teaching children. I teach all the children in the world, which is everyone has a child within, and to help them, as I said earlier, to discover that world out there, which is so rich, and manifest their garden. So that's the master classes, and they have sort of, sorry, I just turned the light off there. They have sort of, there we go. They have complemented now a 1 year course, which is much more intricate. It's more for intermediate advanced learners to do the same, but with 76 sessions all through the year that follow the school year. So there's a very different approach there.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So this is now November. We're recording this in mid-November. People aren't necessarily thinking about the gardens at this time of year. What would you say is the important thing to be doing at this time of year?
Well, as it's November and we are facing wet weather and cloggy soil, very heavy soil usually at this time of year. You can't do much with the soil unless you've got already a good friable soil that's well structured. Someone had a garden before and you're continuing. But if you start a new garden, I would say at this time of year, it's really, if you look in nature, is this point of death in the year. We celebrate death, Remembrance Day. All the traditions celebrated that death point. Wherever you go traditionally at this time in the seasons, and you look at the trees and all you see is the bare structure. So isn't it the best thing then to look at the structure of the garden, the structure of the soil, the layout of something, how it could relate to each other like we did in the second class. And then the next class is going to be in December when everything's going to be dormant, is really to start looking in the soil, which is most alive at that time. So at that time, we can actually look at the soil life. We can look at what has developed as humus, how to restore the humus if there's not enough there, what's the structure, what's the pH, acidity, alkalinity, and assess the soil at that time. And then prepare for the late winter when we have to really start looking at growing the plants. We need to plan what are we actually wanting to grow in that garden, where we prepare the soil throughout the winter when it's most alive and nature is dormant. So we're disturbing the soil life and the plant life least. And so the closest that we can think of is really now it's the time for planning, particularly if we look at the period between Holy Night and Three Kings Day, so 24th of December to 6th of January. It's really the time where we review the year. So if we've been gardening, we can review the year, what did really go well. We can look forward into the new year, start planning what are the plants we want to really start growing and sowing. So you start making your seed order plan and start seed ordering. But also you have this special time where you can bury the seeds that you have already, if you have some leftovers, in the soil in a box and enliven them in that lively soil that's there in midwinter. Very interesting that in biodynamics we did a lot of experiments that if you do that between Holy Night and Three Kings, in this time of reflection and visioning, even the seed will benefit from an enlivening rejuvenation, and the plants grow stronger, healthier, and germinate better. So there's a lot of little tricks that we're working with in biodynamics, quite different from the general sort of approach, which is maybe more pragmatic, where we can enliven even the seeds when we work with them.
So let me get this absolutely clear.
Yeah.
You put the seeds in a box, so you're not planting them.
No.
So you
in the seed packet, in a box.
Packet in the
sealed.
box, and okay, and is this a cardboard box or is it a?
It would be a hard wooden box that has a good lid that closes, that no water infiltrates, and it's only there for 12 days and nights.
Okay, so
12 days of Christmas.
Needs to be a wooden box. It can't be plastic because
I would prefer wooden, natural material, or something earthenware that can be covered with a wooden lid or something.
Okay, so some sort of terracotta.
So there's a breathing going on between the soil, and you can imagine that biome. The soil has trillions of bacteria and fungi and protozoa and viruses and all these wonderful creatures that are microorganisms and macroorganisms, and they breathe at that time of year, really strongly breathing activity, and all that breath is taken up by the seeds, and the seeds is like awakened to go like tickled, like can you wake up for the new year and start growing really well? We're going to nourish you. There's going to be communication going on. You don't want to separate them with plastic.
So would a terracotta pot that's covered
Yeah,
do the trick?
would be good enough. Yeah, because it wouldn't absorb that much moisture to moisten the seed over 12 days and nights. In winter, often it's also frosty and not so rainy, maybe even snow. I mean, if you're lucky, then you have snow, then it's even better for the seed than just rain. But let's pray for some more snow and frost.
Okay, well, that is why I love talking to you. There's always a delightful surprise. I always learn something fantastic. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, that has given me a spur to buy seed as soon as possible so that I can prepare to put everything into the ground. That is absolutely stunning. How
And as
ex
I said, the older seed will benefit even more because as you lose viability, they go more dormant and they have a harder time to wake up, so to speak, to be, viable. And so this procedure will help the older seed also to be more viable and germinate better and what have you. And the new seed is, you know, on track. It's like the younger generation ready to jump.
wow.
So it's a little bit of a memory jogger. Hey, you're there to grow. And
Well,
the
well, there are
nature around is reminding the seeds to wake up in spring.
that's lovely because I mean there are plants, that need that stratification, that need that exposure
Also, yeah.
to the seeds need the exposure to frost. I mean, we know about garlic, but there
Yeah.
are other
Mhm.
flower seeds that I know need that process. I just hadn't expected it to be all seeds would benefit from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a
Okay.
specific time that was pointed out because I don't know if you know the old tradition and people can practice that if we don't have a chance to talk before Christmas. The 12 days of Christmas correspond each one to a day of a month of the year. And so you check the weather during that day, it gives you the weather pattern for the next year in that month. That's pretty accurate actually, because last year there was almost no rain for 8 days or so, and it corresponded to the drought we had until almost September.
Hmm.
And then it started raining and, cloud formation, everything, you look at everything, temperature, cloud formation, wind directions, and everything, write it down during the day, maybe a few times, and do weather observations. So in a way, this time is a time where even the weather is reflecting back over the last year. How does it have to balance out the imbalances from the previous year for the next year? Because it's a living organism, the Earth. It's in communication. It's communicating in a certain sense, like I'm communicating with you now, describing how the seeds communicate with the Earth, or just like humans, but in an invisible, inaudible way that there's always something going on that then it projects into the new year. What can we do in the new year to improve life on the Earth? Because we're so influenced by the cosmos, and I'm making some huge discoveries there in terms of super waves and galactic impulses that come from the center of the galaxy to inform life carries on. This constant creation going on and communication with the cosmos.
So I'm thinking about, the holy nights as you said, and of course this is the solstice, and it's all to do with the actual solstice. Um, that is it exactly in that period. So it's right in the beginning of winter. Those
Yeah,
first few that first couple of weeks of winter
mhm,
that we're really looking at this.
yeah.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. So if people want to find out more about your courses, how do they do that?
Well, it can go on Holistic Living University and just Google that. Should come up with the website. And also, we are on the Biodynamic Association UK website where people can also order their preparations if they want to really get deeply into biodynamics. and sensitize and rejuvenate the soil and plants. And then on social media, we have a Facebook site, which is Holistic Living University. And then on Instagram, also if you Google Holistic Living, it's actually without a G because it was taken already or something. And yeah, that should get you started. Particularly the website is it's very elaborate, and there you can book all your courses, both the year course, the master classes, and we'll have coming up bee courses, which we started already in the autumn with a beekeeper who's a long-standing participant of our work in the university. And then sacred geometry and architecture, we're going to start giving some offerings, and also sacred and holistic movement, which we're going to start. And then beyond that, for those who really want to look more at the inner work, we're having a festival, seasonal festival group that's working very strongly since Michaelmas, 29th of September, of creating new festivals, because we're so stuck in the old ways of either we go back to Indian traditions or Ayurvedic or pagan, Druidic or Celtic, or the Viking tradition, or we even go to the Christian tradition or the Islamic or whatever we practice and what we used as tradition. But we're following something that was practiced for 2,000 years or 5,000 years and have no experience inwardly of how we relate to nature at this moment, in this present moment. So we're having created a group, a core group, we call it kind of the ethereal grail group, which is invisible, holding this process where we're creating festivals out of the moment together as a community of people exploring how to celebrate life, prepare for an experience to share it with others in practice. So we're doing something very vividly over the 12 Holy Nights, preparing an Advent. So the 4 Advent Sundays, we prepare for the Holy Nights, and we're going to have open house at my place, and then we have Zoom meetings. Every evening we're going to have a contribution that's particular to each month of the year in relationship to the different virtues and inner processes that we start preparing for the year. And that's going to take us right through the year with all the different festivals that, traditionally were celebrated, but adding a new perspective to it through our own exploration and research.
That is absolutely wonderful. I think that for our community assembly members, this is a particular interest, your work, because many are looking at buying lands together and creating communities on the land together. And so there is much to be learned and shared here in terms of beekeeping and so many other things
Yeah.
that we're all reconnecting with. So this is wonderful. And it's lovely to have you as a community assembly member yourself, wanting to help us along as we all strive towards our independence and I was going to say our collective independence, because it's our individual independence, but then it's also our joint independence because we're working together towards helping each other in our independence. So it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. Thank you very much for your time today.
It's a great pleasure, delight, and a joy always to share with you and your communities. Let's continue in the conversation and developing these beautiful ventures of sovereignty and, as you say, joined in hand, not singularly, not isolated, like many people would like to see, that people start going back to the land and live their own hardship there, because in isolation that would happen. We'd become slaves to nature again, but in community we can really thrive.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that is in fact the very spirit of the Community Assembly of the British Isles. So do remember that if you haven't yet joined, the invitation is there, as is the link in the description box. And if you have already joined but are looking for inspiration, well, just look for a local assembly, or if there isn't one, do go ahead and start. All the information is on the website, and the link is in the description box. as indeed are the links that Hans Gunther has provided for us. So until next time, be inspired. Goodbye.
Goodbye and blessings.